The clock on the hospital wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Maya finally clocked out. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers, and her scrubs felt heavy after pulling back-to-back shifts in the emergency room. 16 hours of dealing with everything from heart attacks to car accidents had left her exhausted, but she couldn't complain. The overtime pay would help cover her mom's medication costs. She walked through the empty hospital parking lot, keys jingling in her tired hands. The summer air was thick and humid, making her long-sleeved shirt stick to her skin. Most people would have rolled up their sleeves by now, but Maya kept hers down out of habit. Some things were better left covered, especially in a small town, like Millfield, where people loved to talk. Her beat-up Honda Civic sat under a flickering streetlight. Maya had bought it 3 years ago with her first nursing paycheck, and despite its dents and scratches, it had never let her down. She turned. The key! And the engine coughed to life like an old man clearing his throat. The radio crackled with late-night talk shows as she pulled out of the parking lot and onto Highway 47. The road stretched ahead of her like a black ribbon under the moonlight. No other cars in sight, just the way she liked it after dealing with. Crowds of people all day. Maya rolled down the windows and let the night air wash over her face. In moments like these, driving through the quiet countryside, she could almost forget about the stress of her job and the weight of her past. 20 minutes into the drive, the engine started making a sound she'd never heard before. A grinding, metal-on-metal noise that made her stomach drop. She pressed the gas pedal, hoping it would smooth out. But the sound got worse. Then came the steam, rising from under the hood like a white flag of surrender. "Come on, not tonight," she whispered, pulling over to the shoulder. The car shuddered to a stop, and when she tried to restart it, nothing happened except a sad clicking sound. Maya sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, trying not to cry from frustration. Her phone showed no signal. Of course, this stretch of highway was notorious for dead zones, something the local phone company promised to fix every election year, but never did. She looked around at the empty road and sighed. Her options were limited: sit here until morning and hope someone drove by or walked to that bar she'd passed a few miles back. Rusty's Roadhouse wasn't the kind of place Maya would normally choose to visit. Even driving by, she could see the rows of motorcycles parked outside and hear the music thumping from within. But it was the only building with lights on for miles, and she needed to use a phone. She grabbed her purse, locked the car, and started walking. Her nursing shoes weren't made for hiking down dark highways, but she'd been through worse, much worse. The gravel crunched under her feet as she made her way toward the distant glow of neon signs. The closer she got, the louder the music became. Heavy rock mixed with the rumble of motorcycle engines and the sound of men laughing. Through the windows, she could see leather jackets and bandanas, pool tables, and clouds of cigarette smoke. This definitely wasn't her usual crowd, but Maya had learned long ago that you did what you had to do to survive. She paused at the entrance, gathering her courage. The wooden door was covered in stickers and patches from different motorcycle clubs. Iron Wolves MC was prominently displayed, along with several others she didn't recognize. Maya took a deep breath and pushed through the door. The smell hit her first. Beer, cigarettes, and motor oil mixed with something she couldn't quite identify. The music was even louder inside, and every conversation seemed to be conducted at shouting volume. As her eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, she realized that every single person in the bar was staring at her. The talking didn't stop exactly, but it got quieter. Pool balls stopped clicking. Even the jukebox seemed to lower its voice. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks as dozens of eyes tracked her movement across the room. She kept her chin up and walked toward the bar, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. The bartender was an older man with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and arms covered in faded tattoos. He looked up from the beer he was pouring and studied her with curious eyes. Maya approached the bar and waited for him to finish serving another customer. "Excuse me?" she said politely when he finally looked her way. "I'm sorry to bother you, but my car broke down about 2 miles up the road. Could I possibly use your phone to call for a tow truck?" The bartender, whose name tag read Pete, looked her up and down, not in a threatening way, but like he was trying to figure out what her story was. "Phone's in the back corner," he said finally, nodding toward the far end of the bar. "Local call?" "Yes, sir. Just calling Jimmy's Towing. They're listed in the phone book, right?" Pete nodded and went back to his work, but Maya could feel him watching her from the corner of his eye. She made her way through the crowd, keeping her head down and avoiding eye contact. The conversations around her were typical bar talk, motorcycle rallies, and work complaints and sports arguments, but she caught fragments of other discussions that made her skin crawl. The phone booth was wedged between a cigarette machine and a dusty jukebox that had seen better decades. Maya fumbled through the phone book until she found Jimmy's number, then dropped quarters into the slot with shaking hands. The phone rang 4 times before a sleepy voice answered. Jimmy's Towing. "This is Jimmy. Hi, I'm sorry to call so late. My car broke down on Highway 47, about 2 miles east of Rusty's Roadhouse. Could you send someone out?" There was a pause. "Lady, it's almost midnight on a Saturday. I'm going to have to charge you double for an after-hours call, and I can't get out there until morning anyway. All my trucks are tied up with rally weekend." Maya's heart sank. The annual motorcycle rally brought thousands of bikers to the area, and apparently it also tied up all the tow trucks. "What time in the morning?" "Earliest I can do is 8 a.m. You got somewhere to wait?" She looked around the bar at the leather-clad, men shooting pool, and the women in tight jeans laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't that funny. "I'll figure something out. Thank you." After hanging up, Maya stood by the phone for a moment, trying to decide what to do next. She could walk back to her car and sleep there, but the idea of spending 6 hours alone on a dark highway didn't appeal to her. She could call her mother, but that would mean waking up a woman who needed her sleep more than Maya needed rescuing. As she stood there thinking, she became aware that the noise level in the bar had dropped again. When she looked up, she realized why. A group of bikers near the pool table were staring at her with expressions that made her stomach tighten. They weren't looking at her like the other patrons had, with curiosity or mild interest. They were looking at her like predators sizing up prey. Maya straightened her shoulders and walked back toward the bar, planning to thank Pete and leave. But as she moved through the crowd, she noticed one man in particular watching her with eyes that held nothing but trouble. The man who had been watching Maya was built like a truck. His leather vest hung open over a beer-stained t-shirt, and his arms were thick as tree trunks. The patch on his vest read Diesel in bold letters, and underneath it said Enforcer in smaller print. His face was weathered and mean, with small eyes that seemed to look right through people. Maya tried to ignore him as she made her way back to the bar, but she could feel his stare burning into her back. She'd dealt with difficult people before, both in the hospital and in other places she'd rather not think about. The key was to stay calm, be polite, and get out as quickly as possible. "Thank you for letting me use your phone," she said to Pete when she reached the bar. "I'll be heading back to my car now." Pete looked up from washing glasses. "Tow truck coming?" "In the morning. I'll just wait in my car until then." "That's a long walk in the dark," Pete said, his voice carrying a note of concern. "Highway 47 ain't exactly safe at night, especially for someone walking alone." Before Maya could respond, a loud voice boomed across the bar. "Well, well, well! What do we have here?" She turned to see Diesel pushing his way through the crowd, a beer bottle in his massive hand. Several other bikers followed behind him like a pack of wolves. The conversations around them died down as people sensed trouble brewing. "Looks like we got ourselves a visitor," Diesel continued, his words slightly slurred from too much alcohol. "Pretty little thing, too. Don't get many of your type around here." Maya's jaw tightened at the way he said your type, but she kept her voice steady. I'm just using the phone, sir. I'll be leaving now. Sir? Diesel laughed, a harsh sound that made several people look away. You hear that, boys? She called me sir. Got some manners, I'll give her that. One of his friends, a skinny man with missing teeth, chuckled. More manners than most folks who come through here. Maya started to move toward the door, but Diesel stepped sideways, blocking her path. He wasn't directly in front of her, but he was close enough to make it clear she wasn't going anywhere without his permission. Now hold on there, sweetheart. No need to rush off. Why don't you stay and have a drink with us? It's rally weekend and we're feeling friendly. The way he said friendly made Maya's skin crawl. She'd heard that tone before, in places far from here. No, thank you. I really need to get back to my car. Car broke down, huh? Diesel took a long pull from his beer bottle. That's too bad. Real shame. A pretty girl like you stranded out here all alone. Lucky for you, we're generous folks. Always happy to help a lady in distress. The other bikers around him started grinning, and Maya realized she was in serious trouble. She glanced around the bar, looking for allies, but most people had turned away or were suddenly very interested in their drinks. Even Pete seemed to be avoiding eye contact. I appreciate the offer, Maya said carefully, but I'm fine on my own. My ride will be here soon. It was a lie, but she hoped they'd believe it. Instead, Diesel's expression darkened. Your ride? Thought you said the tow truck wasn't coming until morning. His voice had gotten quieter, more dangerous. You lying. To me, girl? The word girl hit Maya like a slap. She was 28 years old and had been through things these men couldn't imagine, but to them she was just a girl to be pushed around. Something cold and hard settled in her chest. I'm not lying about anything, she said, her voice gaining strength. I made a mistake about the timing, that's all. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to leave. She tried to step around Diesel, but this time he moved directly into her path. His beer bottle clinked against hers as he leaned closer, and she could smell the alcohol on his breath. See, now that's where you're wrong. You don't need to leave. What you need to do is show some respect. You come into our place, use our phone, act all high and mighty like you're better than us. That ain't right. I never said I was better than anyone, Maya replied, fighting to keep her voice calm. I just asked to use the phone. I said please and thank you, just like my mother taught me. Your mother, Diesel sneered. Yeah, I bet. She taught you all kinds of things. Probably taught you to think you're special, didn't she? Taught you that you're just as good as everyone else. The racist undertone in his words was barely hidden now, and Maya felt anger rising in her chest. But she also felt something else, something that had kept her alive in much worse situations than this. She felt the cold calculation that came when threat assessment kicked in. There were at least 15 bikers in Diesel's group, and probably 40 people total in the bar. The nearest exit was 20 feet away through a crowd of people who clearly weren't going to help her. Her car keys were in her purse, but her car was 2 miles away and broken anyway. Look, she said, trying one more time to defuse the situation. I don't want any trouble. I'm tired. I've had a long day at work and I just want to get home. Can we please just let this go? Work? Diesel laughed again. What kind of work does a girl like you do? Let me guess. You work at one of those fancy offices downtown pushing papers around, looking down on working folks like us. I'm a nurse, Maya said simply. For a moment, Diesel seemed taken aback. Then his expression hardened again. A nurse. Well, ain't that something? Think you're real important, don't you? Think you're saving lives and making a difference. I try. To help people when they're hurt, Maya said. That's all. Help people, Diesel repeated mockingly. But you won't help us out by having one little drink. That's pretty selfish, don't you think, boys? The crowd around them had grown larger. Maya realized that what had started as casual harassment was turning into something much more serious. Diesel was performing now, showing off for his audience, and that made him infinitely more dangerous. "One drink," he continued, moving closer. "That's all we're asking. One drink to show you're not too good for us. What's the harm in that?" Maya looked around desperately, but every face she saw was either hostile or carefully neutral. No one was going to help her. She was on her own, just like she'd been so many times before. "I don't drink," she lied. "Well then," Diesel said, his grin turning nasty, "I guess we'll have to find another way for you to be sociable." He reached out and grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh hard enough to leave bruises. Maya tried to pull away, but his grip was like iron. "Let go of me," she said firmly. "Or what?" Diesel challenged. "You gonna call the cops? Good luck with that, sweetheart. Sheriff's department is spread pretty thin tonight with all the rally traffic." Maya's mind raced through. Her options. She could scream, but who would help? She could try to run, but Diesel's friends were positioned to block the exits. She could fight, but she was outnumbered 15-1. As Diesel's grip tightened on her arm, Maya made a decision that would change everything. Maya tried to twist her arm free, but Diesel's grip only tightened. His fingers were like steel bands, and she could already feel her circulation being cut off. The crowd around them pressed closer, some curious, others clearly enjoying the show. "Please, let go," Maya said again, her voice steady despite the panic building in her chest. "You're hurting me." "Hurting you?" Diesel's voice dripped with fake concern. "Well, we can't have that, can we? Maybe if you stopped trying to run away from us good folks, there wouldn't be any hurt feelings." He pulled her closer, and Maya could smell the mixture of beer, cigarettes, and motor oil that seemed to cling to everything in this place. Her nursing training kicked in automatically, cataloging details. His pupils were dilated from alcohol, his reflexes would be slower, but he was still twice her size and had 15 friends backing him up. "Look, I really don't want any trouble," Maya said, trying to keep her voice calm. "I just want to call my friend to pick me up and leave quietly." "Your friend?" Diesel laughed, and several of his buddies joined in. "What friend? Thought you said you were calling a tow truck. Keep changing your story, don't you?" Maya realized her mistake immediately. When people were scared, they often said things that didn't match up, and predators like Diesel knew how to exploit that confusion. She'd seen it happen in emergency rooms when police questioned victims who were too shaken to think straight. "The tow truck driver is a friend," she said, trying to recover. "He's coming to get me." "At midnight? Must be a real good friend," Diesel sneered. "Or maybe you're just making things up because you think you're too good to spend time with us." The situation was spiraling out of control, and Maya knew it. In her years as a trauma nurse, she'd learned to read people quickly. Diesel wasn't just drunk and obnoxious. He was the kind of man who enjoyed having power over others, who fed on fear and intimidation. The more she resisted, the more he'd escalate. "I never said I was too good for anyone," Maya replied, trying a different approach. "I'm just tired from working a long shift, that's all." "Working," one of Diesel's friends muttered. "Yeah, right." "What's that supposed to mean?" Maya asked, turning to face the man who'd spoken. He was skinny with greasy hair and a patch that read Spider. "Nothing. Nothing at all," Spider said with a smirk. "Just wondering what kind of work keeps a person out this late, that's all." The implication was clear, and Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I work at the county hospital. I'm a registered nurse in the emergency department." "Sure you are," Diesel said. "And I'm a rocket scientist." The crowd laughed, and Maya realized they'd already made up their minds about who she was and what she was doing out here alone. Nothing she said was going to change their opinion. "You know what I think?" Diesel continued, pulling her even closer. "I think you're just stuck up. Think you're better than working folks like us. Well, let me tell you something, Princess. Nobody's better than anybody else in here." Maya's training told her to de-escalate, to find common ground, to avoid confrontation at all costs. But something deeper than training was stirring in her chest. something that had been forged in places where de-escalation meant death and common. Ground was measured in blood and sand. "You're right," she said quietly. "Nobody's better than anybody else. That's why I treat everyone the same, whether they're a CEO or a homeless person. That's why I've never turned away a patient, because of how they looked or where they came from." "Oh, listen to her," Spider called out. "Saint Maya, saving the world one patient at a time." "I never said my name was Maya," she replied, her voice growing colder. The comment stopped Spider short, and even Diesel seemed to pause. Maya realized her mistake, but it was too late now. The alcohol and adrenaline had made her slip up. "Well, well," Diesel said slowly. "What other secrets you keeping? From us? Nurse Maya?" Before she could answer, he jerked her arm hard, trying to pull her toward the bar. Maya instinctively resisted, planting her feet and pulling back. The sudden motion threw Diesel off balance, and he stumbled slightly, his face darkened with rage. "You want to do this the hard way? Fine by me." What happened next seemed to occur, in slow motion. Diesel's free hand shot out and grabbed the front of Maya's shirt. The fabric was old and worn from too many hospital shifts and too many trips through industrial washing machines. When he yanked on it, trying to drag her forward, the material gave way with a loud ripping sound. The shirt tore from collar to waist, exposing Maya's shoulder and upper back. But instead of the skin or undergarments that Diesel had expected to see, something else was revealed in the dim bar lighting. The entire room went silent. Even the jukebox seemed to stop mid-song as every eye in the bar focused on Maya's exposed shoulder and back. What they saw there made several men step backward, their faces draining of color. Across Maya's shoulder blade was a tattoo unlike anything most of them had ever seen. It wasn't some decorative design or romantic quote. It was clearly military, professional work done by someone who understood the weight of what they were creating. The centerpiece was a detailed rendering of the 82nd Airborne Division patch, the paratrooper wings spread wide against a background of desert camouflage. Below it, in crisp military font, were the words, "Kandahar Province 2019, and underneath that, Combat Medic. But it was what surrounded the main design that made the room hold its collective breath. Names were tattooed in neat rows, each one obviously representing a fallen soldier. Rodriguez Tony, 19. Williams Kevin, 22. Peterson Danny, 20. The list went on, a memorial carved in flesh rather than stone. At the bottom of the design was something that made several veterans in the crowd recognize immediately the distinctive outline of a Purple Heart medal, with a date from 3 years ago. Diesel's hand fell away from the torn shirt as if he'd been burned. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no sound came out. The cocky swagger that had defined him moments before was completely gone. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered from the back of the crowd. Maya straightened her shoulders, no longer trying to hide what had been revealed. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the shocked faces, the dropped jaws, the sudden respect in expressions that had been hostile just seconds before. Old Pete, the bartender, had stopped wiping glasses and was staring at the tattoo with tears starting to form in his weathered eyes. His hands were shaking as he set down the glass he'd been holding. "Danny Peterson," he whispered, his voice cracking. That's my grandson's name." The silence in the bar was absolute now. Even the men who'd been laughing and encouraging Diesel's behavior were staring at Maya with something approaching awe. Maya looked directly at Pete, her voice soft but clear enough for everyone to hear. Danny was a good soldier. He was brave, and he was kind, and in his final moments, he asked me to tell his grandfather that he loved him and was proud to be his grandson. Pete's knees buckled, and he had to grab the bar to keep from falling. Pete's legs gave out completely, and he slumped against the bar, tears streaming down his weathered face. The tough old bartender who'd seen everything in 30 years of running this place was crying like a child. "You were there," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You were with him when he died." Maya pulled her torn shirt closed as best she could and walked slowly toward Pete. Every eye in the bar followed her movement, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Where there had been hostility and threat just minutes before, now there was something approaching reverence. "Yes, I was there," Maya said gently, reaching across the bar to place her hand on Pete's trembling shoulder. "Danny talked about you all the time. He showed everyone pictures of the motorcycle you two rebuilt. Together." He was so proud of his grandfather. Pete looked up at her through his tears. "The Harley. He loved that old bike. We worked on it every weekend when he was in high school." "He told me about teaching you to ride when he was 12, Maya continued, her voice soft but carrying clearly through the silent bar. "How you let him steer while you worked the clutch and brakes. He said those were the best days of his life." A broken sob escaped from Pete's chest. "I should have been there. Should have been with him." "He knew you wanted to be," Maya replied. "He understood why you couldn't enlist at your age. He said, you served your country by raising him to be a good man, and that was enough." Around them, the crowd of bikers and bar patrons stood frozen, watching this unexpected reunion between a grandfather's grief and the woman who'd held his grandson's final moments. Several of the older men in the crowd were wiping their own eyes, remembering friends and family who'd never come home. Diesel stood off to the side, his earlier bravado completely gone. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the realization of what he'd done. The man who'd been so eager to intimidate and humiliate Maya now couldn't even meet her eyes. "I don't understand," said Spider, Diesel's skinny friend. His voice was quiet, confused. "You're a combat medic? Like, actually military?" Maya nodded. 3 tours, Afghanistan. I was attached to the 82nd Airborne as field medical support. But you're... Spider started to say something, then stopped himself, looking embarrassed. "A woman? Black? What exactly did you think disqualified me from serving my country?" Maya's voice carried an edge now, but not anger. Something harder, and more controlled. An older biker with gray in his beard stepped forward from the back of the crowd. His leather vest was covered in patches, including several Maya recognized from her time overseas. "Ma'am, I served 2 tours in Iraq with the Marines. I want to apologize for how you were treated here tonight." "No need," Maya replied. "You weren't the one treating me badly." The Marine looked directly at Diesel, his expression stern. "Some of us know better. Some of us were raised to respect those who served." Other veterans in the crowd began to step forward, creating a protective circle around Maya. She counted at least 6 men with military patches on their vests, plus a few others who had the bearing of former service members even without the insignia. "That Purple Heart," said another voice from the crowd. A woman with short gray hair pushed through to the front. "What happened?" Maya's hand instinctively went to her back, where the tattoo of the medal was hidden beneath her torn shirt. "Roadside. Bomb. I was treating wounded soldiers when a second IED went off. Shrapnel caught me, but I was able to keep working until the medevac arrived." "Jesus," the woman whispered. "How many soldiers did you save?" "I don't keep count," Maya said simply. "I just did my job." Pete had recovered enough to stand up straight, though his eyes were still red with tears. Danny wrote about a medic who saved his squad when they got ambushed. Said she ran through enemy fire to reach wounded men, patching them up while bullets were flying overhead. "Was that you?" Maya nodded slowly. "There were a lot of ambushes, but yes, I remember Danny's unit. They were good soldiers." He said this medic, this woman, she stayed with him after everyone else had been evacuated, held his hand and talked to him about home while they waited for the helicopter. Pete's voice was getting stronger now, filled with gratitude instead of grief. He said she made sure he wasn't alone. No soldier should die alone, Maya replied. That's a promise I made to myself and to every person I treated. The silence that followed was different from the hostile quiet that had greeted Maya's arrival. This was respectful, almost sacred. Men who had been ready to laugh at Diesel's bullying were now looking at Maya with something approaching worship. Diesel himself finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know. Maya turned to face him, her expression neutral. Would it have mattered if you did? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Diesel looked around at his friends, at the other club members, at the veterans who were now glaring at him with open disgust. His mouth opened and closed several times before he found his voice. Yeah, it would have mattered. Why? Maya pressed. Because I'm a veteran? Because I served in combat? Because I saved lives? Or because you realized I'm a human being who deserves basic respect regardless of what's written on my skin? Diesel couldn't answer. The truth was too ugly to say out loud. He would have treated her differently if he'd known she was military, but not because he respected her as a person. Only because she belonged to a club, he understood. The Marine veteran who had spoken earlier stepped closer to Diesel. I think you need to leave, brother. Right now. Hey, wait a minute, Diesel protested. This is my bar, too. I got just as much right to be here as anyone. Not tonight, you don't, said another voice. The president of the Iron Wolves, a man called Tank, pushed through the crowd. His face was stone-cold, angry. You disrespected a combat veteran. You put your hands on a woman who served this country. You made all of us look like animals. Come on, Tank, you know me. I was just having some fun. Fun? Tank's voice rose. You think attacking a war hero is fun? You think terrorizing someone who saved American soldiers is entertainment? The other Iron Wolves members were nodding in agreement. Maya could see the group dynamics shifting in real time. Diesel's behavior hadn't just been wrong, it had embarrassed the entire club in front of veterans and civilians alike. You're out, Tank continued. Turn in your patch. You're done with the Iron Wolves. Diesel looked around desperately, searching for support, but found none. Even Spider was backing away from him, clearly wanting nothing to do with the fallout. This is because of her, Diesel said, pointing at Maya. You're choosing her over me? Over family? She earned her place here, Tank replied coldly. You just lost yours. As Diesel was escorted out by several club members, Pete came around from behind the bar carrying a jacket. It was old and worn, but clean and warm. Miss, I'm sorry about your shirt. This belonged to my grandson. I think he'd want you to have it. Maya accepted the jacket with a small smile. Thank you. But I should really get going. I need to get back to my car. Actually, said the Marine veteran, I called my buddy who runs a garage. He's going to tow your car to his shop tonight and fix it first thing tomorrow morning. No charge. I can't accept that, Maya protested. Yes, you can, Pete said firmly. It's the least we can do. And I'm driving you home, added Tank. No, arguments. It's not safe for you to be out there alone tonight. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her. An hour ago, these same people had been hostile strangers in a dangerous place. Now they were treating her like family, like she belonged here. Thank you, she said simply. As they prepared to leave, Pete grabbed her hand one more time. Miss Maya, thank you for being with him. Thank you for making sure he wasn't alone. Maya squeezed his hand gently. He was proud to be your grandson, Pete. He died a hero, and he knew you'd be proud of him. Outside, Tank's motorcycle rumbled to life. Maya climbed on behind him, Danny's jacket keeping her warm in the cool night air. As they rode through the darkness toward her home, she thought about how strangely life worked sometimes. She'd come to this bar as a stranded traveler in need of help. She was leaving as something else entirely. A recognized hero, a respected veteran, and maybe, surprisingly, among friends she'd never expected to find. Sometimes the worst nights turned into something beautiful after all.